Hello and welcome to my little corner of the internet here. So on the workbench today, we have a 1967 Fender Pro Reverb. This is a blackface era amplifier. It is beautiful, stunning, very clean, nearly all original, kind of exactly what you hope for. Viewers of the channel will probably recognize this amp. I featured it in a couple videos, one being in the Vibrolux series, and then the other being my instructional video on how to install a 3-prong power cord in a vintage amp. So this was the test dummy, if you will, for that video. And yeah, I've owned this amp for a bit. I love it. It sounds fantastic, but it's no longer my amp. I did sell it, which is really unlike me. I tend to never sell anything and hang on to it kind of as a rule, especially things that are nice like this. But I'm after a much bigger fish to me, and this fits a very similar space as my Vibrolux. So if you don't know, Vibrolux and Pro Reverb are nearly exactly the same amp outside of a bigger power transformer in the Pro Reverb, and then obviously a 212 cabinet versus a 210 configuration. So, but very similar amps overall. Now this, again, as you can see, is basically all original. And so for the new owner, I want to make sure that it's good to go for the long term. It sounds great, plays great, it's not noisy or anything like that, which is why I've not touched it. But now that it's going to somebody else, I just want to make sure that that work is done for them. So we've got the original electrolytics here. We've got the original electrolytics in the doghouse as well, and the bias supply, all of those. So we will be going through and replacing all of those here and making it solid for the next few decades, which is kind of what you want. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into it. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and see if there's any stray voltage in the amplifier. There really shouldn't be, but we'll check with a multimeter. So let's go ahead and do that. I got a new multimeter for Christmas. This is the Synday 18B Plus. Can't remember who recommended this to me. Probably Lyle, if I had to guess, but over at Psionic Audio. But yeah, I'm giving it a shot, checking it out. The beeping is driving me crazy, I will say that, but outside of that, it seems to be pretty solid. So we'll go ahead and connect that to the ground connection there, just a chassis. And then there's lots of places you can check for voltage in these amplifiers. I like right here because you've got that nice little jumper wire, and you can see there's no DC in the amp. Let's check another spot just to further confirm. Again, no DC. So this amp is safe, and I will point out it is also off of standby. So that's one thing you always want to make sure you're careful of. You want to make sure, if you have the amp in standby, then unfortunately, when you're checking that sort of stuff and you open up the doghouse and touch in there, you can have no voltage here, but could still have voltage in the caps in the doghouse. So just be mindful of that. Keep it off of standby, and then you'll know for sure how much voltage is in this circuit in its entirety. So this amp is totally safe, good to go. Now let's go ahead and start the inspection. These I don't have high hopes for. They look visually fine, but these are almost always bad, the screen and grid resistors here. So let's check these again. This should also be 470 ohm. Hard to grip onto here, but I'll just hold it. 576, so yeah, that's out of spec. A bit too much there. Like that. If one's gone, I'm going to be replacing both, but just to show for the video what this one measures. If I can get the gripper on it. Oh gosh. Somebody explain to me why these digital auto-ranging multimeters do this. So first glance, like what the heck? 0.600 ohms. That's insane. Thought something was wrong. No, you see there's a little K there. So this is in kilo ohms. So for some reason, instead of telling me it's 603 ohms, which is what it's saying it is, it's telling me it's 0.6 K ohms. Or not, sorry, 603 K ohms, 603 ohms. It's instead of putting in ohms, it's putting in kilo ohms, which just makes it way more confusing. Why did it do it on this one but not that one? So yeah, so that's also out of spec. So we'll have to get rid of that one. And I don't have high hopes for the grid stoppers here. So let's check them. These are 1.5Ks and they're reading 1.9. So those will probably go as well. And again, just for the video, we'll check the other one. But if we're replacing one, we're replacing both. Because why wouldn't you? Same thing, 1.9. So those are Those are both gone. All right, let's move on. So moving down here, we've got this electrolytic, which will be replaced. This is a 25 microfarad. I think it's a 50 volt. We'll be replacing this with another 25 microfarad 50 volt as part of the trem circuit. I know people put in like a 5 microfarad here, which will get it to ramp up quicker. So it's less of a delay when you do kind of a quick change on the setting. But it's not a big deal. I don't have any 5 microfarads, so we'll just stick to the stock value here. And then further down, we've got, if you guys can see this, hopefully, 1, 2, 3 dual 25 caps here. So those are your cathode bypass caps for the preamp tubes here. And yeah, we will be replacing these with mod 2525s, the good old classic. Let me grab one real quick. These little guys. So yeah, we'll be replacing all of those with these. Tried and true, work great. Put them in a ton of amps, and they've been super solid. So we'll be swapping this cap here, and that's it for the top. So just to recap, we are going to be replacing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 caps, and then 4 resistors for sure. And then I will kind of do a bit more testing to see if there's anything else that needs it. But that's what we need to do on the top here. And then after that, we will go into the doghouse and do what's left, which is all of those caps and possibly the resistors in there as well. So I've got the soldering iron heating up. Let's dive in. So step 1, as always, we'll just add in some fresh solder here just to get things flowing. So there's a chance that the lead of this is actually used to bridge these 2 eyelets here. So what we're going to do is actually remove the solder so we can get a better idea of what's going on in there. So it appears like that might be the case because there's no solder left in there and it's not going anywhere. So what we're going to do is go ahead and cut it, and then we'll just fold it over. Okay, just a little fold there, and let's go ahead and desolder the other side. Now again, this lead right here could be the lead off of this cap. So we won't know until we try and pull on it and see what happens. And I can see it's moving with this. So once again, same issue. I'll have to go and remove solder. And this wire is very annoyingly in the way. And then always make note that the positive is going to ground on these for the bias. So let's get the replacement cap, and I will have to install it in a way that you won't be able to see anything because if I have it leaned over, the amplifier leaned over, all the solder will want to go that way due to gravity. So bear with me here. Cool, so the bias cap is now installed, and we can go ahead and move on. So with the screen and grid resistors here, we're going to go ahead and remove both, and then we'll install the grids first, then the screens. Now this one, we have 2 wires coming off of this pin, so we got to make sure that those are reconnected when we put it all back together. First, as always, we'll get some solder flowing. Make sure everything's nice and happy. These are always tricky to remove, namely because you got all these wires everywhere, but even more so when you've got a camera angle you're trying to account for. All right, there we go. There's the first one. And again, it doesn't look toasted, but definitely red high. So we've got the resistors removed here. Now for the 1.5K, I'm going to use carbon film because that's what I have available. And then for the 470 ohm, I've got these nice 3 watt heavy duty 5% resistors. So that's what we will be going with. Okay, so we've got those installed, the new 470 ohm screen resistors and the new 1.5K grid resistors, grid stops. That looks great. So now we can go ahead and move on to the electrolytics. All right, first one done. Let's go ahead and move on down. So I have kind of mocked up. I see a lot of people do this, and I've never personally done it, But we're going to give it a shot here where you take 2 of these individual 25 caps, because if you look at the original, it's 2 built into 1. And one of the things you struggle with specifically on Fenders like this is fitting all of the leads in the eyelets. There's not a lot of space here. Now with the mods, you can't get away with not doing this trick of kind of doubling them up, and you'll cut one of these leads, and so you'll have just one in the end, because the mods have very small leads here. But I'm not sure I'm going to have really enough room to fit 2 in this with the ground, these 2 resistors, and this resistor as well. So it's just too much for these eyelets. So we're going to give that a shot, but then to fit them in between like this, I needed to move the resistors out. Now there's plenty of lead to do that. You just have to kind of remove them and space them out a little bit. So that's what I'm doing right now, just to give it a little bit more space so I can kind of just nuzzle these in right in between like that. So that's where we're at here. Perfect, that looks sharp. So let's go ahead and get that soldered in. Awesome, all right. We got 3 down, we got 4 more to go. Same process as before. Add a little fresh solder. And then we know this is the ground connection here, so we can just go ahead and cut this. I'm going to cut it a bit long, and we'll come back to it. Okay, look at that. We are all done with the cathode bypass caps here. So grab this last little bit there. Cool, so that looks good. We got all new cathode bypass caps across the board, and new solder joints everywhere. It looks good. The little twist method, my first attempt, I think is not too shabby, if I don't say so myself. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and end there for the night, as it's quite late. And then tomorrow we will go ahead and flip it over and tackle the doghouse. Very close.